The colony was alive with voices, machines, and footsteps, but for one alien girl, the sound only meant loneliness. Her name was Syria, though almost no one remembered it. She walked through the streets of the human settlement, her head low, her hands clutching a small cloth she always carried. Children laughed and played, running past her, their smiles wide, their eyes shining, but not one of them ever stopped to look at her. Syria had lived among humans for years, yet she never felt part of them. She was small, her skin pale silver, her eyes glowing faintly blue in the dim lights. Her features made her different, and different was something the colony never forgave. When humans gathered to celebrate, Syria always stood at the edges, hidden behind shadows, watching but never joining. The word birthday was strange to her. She heard it whispered with joy, shouted with laughter, and wrapped in music. She saw humans decorate their homes, prepare sweet food, and bring out glowing candles. They cheered as the one being celebrated smiled with pride and happiness. But for Syria, no such day existed. She had never blown out a candle. She had never cut a cake. No voice had ever sung her name in celebration. To the colony, she was invisible, a figure who walked quietly, never demanding attention, never receiving it. At night, when stars filled the black sky, Syria would lie awake and think. She wondered what it would feel like to have one special day, a day where someone smiled only for her. But dreams were fragile, and she had long ago learned not to hold them too tightly. Still, the ache never left her heart. It grew heavier each time she saw a child running with gifts in their hands. Each time she heard the cheers of families gathered in warmth. She pressed her cloth to her face and whispered to herself, maybe one day, though she no longer believed it. The colony workers often passed her without a word. Some looked at her with cold eyes, some ignored her as if she was air. She had a place to sleep, a corner near the market, but no one called it home. No one asked her name, no one cared. And so, Syria moved through life as if she were a ghost. Her steps soft, her voice quieter than the wind. But deep inside, a small part of her still waited, still longed, though she tried to bury it. On one particular day, the colony was busy. A child's birthday was being prepared. Banners of bright colors stretched across the streets, and laughter echoed everywhere. Syria stood near the gate, her eyes fixed on the glowing lights. Her stomach tightened, not from hunger, but from something deeper. She wanted to look away, yet she could not. Every cheer pierced her heart like a sharp blade. As night fell and music filled the air, Syria turned away, walking slowly to her corner. Her feet dragged, her shoulders bent, and her eyes were wet, though no tear fell. She sat on the cold ground, holding her cloth close to her chest. The sound of children singing drifted toward her, warm and full of joy, but for her it was a song of distance. She whispered again to herself, maybe one day. Her voice cracked, her heart heavy. The stars above glimmered, but to her they felt far, unreachable. Syria closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but the ache in her chest refused to let her rest. The colony celebrated. The music played. The candles were blown out. But Syria remained in darkness, forgotten. Yet somewhere in the crowd, a pair of human eyes had seen her. A man had noticed the lonely figure standing apart. And though Syria did not know it yet, her life was about to change. For the first time, someone had truly looked at her. The next morning, the colony stirred with its usual rhythm. Engines roared, vendors shouted, and dust drifted through the narrow paths. But for Syria, it was another day of silence. She walked through the busy streets unseen, like a shadow that no one cared to notice. At the far edge of the colony, a small ship had landed the night before. It was not a grand ship of war or trade, only a modest vessel marked by age and long travel. From its ramp stepped a man, tall and weary, his clothes dusty, his face hardened by countless journeys. His name was Elias, a human who had seen more worlds than most dared to dream. He came seeking rest, supplies, and maybe a reason to stay, though he did not admit it even to himself. Elias moved through the market with careful eyes. He noticed the shouting merchants, the bright decorations, the people laughing. But what caught his attention was not the noise, it was the silence that surrounded one figure. Syria stood near a wall, holding her small cloth, watching others, but never stepping closer. The crowd flowed around her like water around a stone, never touching, never noticing. Elias frowned. There was something in her eyes that made him pause. It was not anger, not fear, but a deep sadness that clung to her like a second skin. He had seen many faces in many colonies, but this one was different. This was the face of someone who had been forgotten. He bought supplies, bartered with traders, and listened to laughter around him. Yet his thoughts returned again and again to the quiet girl. Why did no one speak to her? Why did no one smile at her? In a place so loud, how could anyone remain so invisible? That night, Elias sat in a small rented room, staring at the stars through the cracked window. He thought of the girl's eyes, glowing faint blue against the darkness. He remembered how she had looked at the birthday banners with longing so sharp it almost hurt him. Elias whispered to himself, when was the last time she was happy? But deep down, he already knew the answer. The next day, he saw her again, sitting alone near the market. Children ran past her with sweets in their hands. Merchants laughed as they counted coins. But Sirius sat still, her hands folded, her gaze fixed on nothing. Elias walked closer, and for the first time, someone's shadow fell across her. She lifted her head, startled, her glowing eyes meeting his. Elias did not speak at first. He only gave her a small nod, as if to say, I see you. Siria's lips parted, but no words came. No one had ever looked at her like that. No one had ever made her feel like she was more than air. Without a word, Elias turned and walked into the crowd again. Siria's heart raced, her mind confused. Who was this human? Why did he look at her? Why did he notice her when no one else ever did? For days, Elias kept watching from a distance. He saw how she lingered near celebrations, but never joined. He saw her watching birthday cakes carried with pride, candles glowing like tiny stars. He saw the way her eyes filled with longing before she turned away. And each time, the weight in his chest grew heavier. Elias had known hunger. He had known war. But this was different. This was loneliness so sharp it could cut. He could not ignore it. A thought began to form in his mind. Simple, but powerful. What if he gave her something no one else ever had? What if he gave her a birthday? The idea felt strange at first. Why would a wandering man care for a girl who was not his kin, not even his kind? But HFY, humans for you, was more than a phrase. It was a truth Elias carried. Humans could bring light where there was none. And here, in this forgotten corner of a colony, a light was desperately needed. Elias made a quiet promise to himself that night. He would not let this girl remain invisible. He would not let her heart remain empty. If no one else would care, he would. He would find a way to give her the one thing she had never known. A birthday? Elias began his quiet search the very next morning. The colony was alive with trade, noise, and movement, but he moved with a purpose no one else could guess. He was not looking for weapons, fuel, or maps, the things a traveler usually needed. He was looking for sweetness, warmth, and a spark of joy. He was looking for the pieces of a birthday. The market was not kind. Food was scarce, sugar was expensive, and flour was almost impossible to find. The colony traders valued survival goods above all else. Cakes and candles were luxuries, meaningless in a place where most cared only about credits, metal, and energy. But Elias did not give up. He bartered with one merchant for a small pouch of flour, giving away a polished tool he could have used for his ship. He traded with another for a little sugar, offering part of his ration of dried meat. Each deal cut away at what little he owned, but his heart grew lighter instead of heavy. For each small item he gathered was a step closer to something greater. At one stall, he asked for candles. The merchant laughed at him. Candles, here, in this dust pit. But Elias did not back away. He searched further, moving between traders until he found a pack of thin wax sticks, forgotten and covered in dust. They were not bright, not beautiful, but they could burn, and that was enough. Days passed, and Elias collected what he could. A few eggs from a farmer who lived at the edge of the colony. A small packet of salt from a miner returning from the tunnels. Every piece was hard to get, but every piece mattered. He carried them back to his room at night, arranging them carefully like treasures. Syria noticed him sometimes. She saw him carrying bags, talking to merchants, even arguing with one over prices. But she did not understand. Why would this human spend his days in the market? Why did he look so serious over simple things? She felt curiosity stirring in her chest, but also fear. What if he was planning something dangerous? She had seen humans bring trouble before. Yet Elias kept his plan hidden. He smiled only when he was alone, laying out the ingredients he had fought so hard to find. He remembered the birthdays of his childhood. He remembered the warmth of candles glowing in a dark room, the taste of cake after laughter, the sound of voices singing his name. And he thought, she has never had this. I will give it to her. But the challenge was not only in gathering supplies. The colony was filled with watchful eyes. People noticed when someone spent too much, asked too many questions, or carried things unusual. Rumors could spread fast, and Elias did not want Syria to hear of his plan until it was ready. So he moved carefully, always hiding his true purpose. At night, he began to mix what he had. He lit a small fire in secret, using an old cooking pan he bought from a scrap dealer. He mixed flour, sugar, water, and eggs with his rough hands. It was not perfect, but the scent of sweetness began to fill the small room. For a moment, he closed his eyes and imagined her face when she would see it. The first attempt burned, the second collapsed, but Elias did not give up. He worked through the nights, wasting sleep, wasting strength, but never losing will. He told himself, she deserves at least one perfect memory. And with every failure, he grew closer to success. Meanwhile, Syria watched the colony prepare for yet another human child's birthday. She saw the glowing lights, the laughter, the colorful cloths stretched across the streets. Her chest tightened again, the ache sharper than before. She whispered into her cloth, "Why not me? Why never me?" But she did not know that, this time, something was coming. Someone was fighting quietly for her happiness. In the corner of his room, Elias placed a small cake at last, rough and uneven, but real. Beside it, he laid a candle, thin and fragile, but able to burn. He looked at his work and breathed slowly, his heart steady. Soon, he thought, she will know what it means to be seen. Soon, she will have a birthday. The colony buzzed with excitement. Another birthday was being prepared. Another human child would be surrounded by gifts, laughter, and songs. Banners stretched across the street, colorful fabrics hanging from the walls, and the smell of roasted food drifted through the air. Voices sang cheerfully as merchants decorated their stalls, hoping to sell more during the celebration. The whole place glowed with life, but for Syria, it was another night of shadows. She walked slowly past the crowd, her glowing blue eyes fixed on the decorations. Children carried bright ribbons, women baked bread, men hammered wooden stands together. The entire colony was alive with joy, but Syria felt her chest tightening with every step. Her silver skin caught the lantern light, but no one looked at her. To them, she was still invisible. She stopped near a corner where laughter was the loudest. A little girl danced as her parents placed a crown of flowers on her head. People clapped, cheering, their voices rising like a warm tide. Syria pressed her cloth to her chest, her heart aching. She whispered softly, "Why not me?" The words almost lost under the noise. That night, she returned to her small corner near the market. The music still drifted through the air, sharp and bright. Each sound cut her deeper. She curled against the wall, her body trembling. Her eyes burned, but the tears refused to fall. She bit her lip and whispered, "Maybe I was never meant to belong." The stars above seemed too far to hear her, too far to care. But not everyone ignored her. In another part of the colony, Elias watched from the shadows. He had seen her turn away from the laughter. He had seen her steps heavy, her shoulders bent. He knew the ache she carried, and his resolve hardened like steel. The small cake he had prepared waited in his room. The candle stood ready, but he told himself it was not enough. Tomorrow, he would make it more than just a cake. He would make it a memory, one that no loneliness could erase. Elias moved through the crowd with purpose. He bought a small strip of bright fabric from a merchant, trading one of his last spare parts. It was not much, but it could be tied like a ribbon. He found a few crushed berries, not fresh, not perfect, but enough to add color to the rough cake. Each choice was small, but each one carried weight. As he returned to his room, Elias thought of his own childhood. He remembered the warmth of voices calling his name, the glow of candles, the taste of sweet bread. He remembered blowing out the flame and feeling like the universe itself had listened to his wish. And he thought, she deserves at least one wish. He placed the ribbon beside the cake, his tired hands trembling. He whispered, "Tomorrow, Syria, Tomorrow you will not be forgotten. Meanwhile, Syria lay awake, staring at the night sky. The colony lights dimmed slowly, but the sound of laughter carried far into the darkness. She hugged her cloth tighter, her voice trembling as she spoke to herself. If I close my eyes, maybe I can pretend the songs are for me. Her eyes finally closed, but her heart did not rest. Dreams came, but they were not kind. She dreamed of standing in the middle of the crowd while everyone turned away. She dreamed of reaching for a cake that crumbled to dust in her hands. She dreamed of candles blowing out before she could touch them. And when she woke, her cheeks were wet, though she did not remember crying. The day before had ended, and a new day was beginning. The colony was alive again, preparing for joy. But something unseen was also being prepared. A small gift, a quiet act of kindness, hidden in the hands of a weary human. Elias stood in his room, the cake before him, the candle ready, the ribbon shining faintly in the dim light. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Tomorrow, she will know she is not alone." And though Syria did not yet believe it, her life was only hours away from changing forever. The colony's morning sun rose pale and dusty, its light filtering weakly through the clouds. Merchants shouted, machines hummed, and children laughed, but Syria felt none of it. She walked the narrow paths slowly, her small cloth clutched in her hand. The ache in her chest was heavier than ever, for she had spent the night dreaming of candles that vanished before she could touch them. She wandered to the edge of the colony, away from the laughter and music. She wanted silence, even if silence meant loneliness. Her glowing eyes searched the horizon, but found only sand and stone. "Maybe this is all I will ever have," she whispered, her voice soft as the wind. Elias, however, was moving with quiet determination. In his small room, the cake stood ready, uneven but whole. A single candle waited at its center, the ribbon tied carefully around its edge. It was not the grandest gift, not the sweetest dessert, but it was something more. It was a promise. He lifted it with both hands, holding it as if it were fragile glass. His heart beat faster with every step he took toward the girl. Syria sat near the outer gate, staring at the dust drifting across the ground. Her shoulders bent, her head low. She did not notice Elias approaching until his shadow fell across her. Her eyes lifted slowly, and there he was, the human she had seen in the market, the one who looked at her as if she mattered. In his hands, she saw something glowing faintly. Her breath caught, her eyes widened. It was a cake, rough, imperfect, but real. At its center flickered the fragile flame of a candle, dancing against the breeze. Syria froze, unable to move, unable to believe. Her lips parted, but no words came. The world around her seemed to fade. The noise of the colony, the laughter of children, the shouts of traders. Everything dimmed until only the human and the glowing flame remained. Elias knelt in front of her, his tired eyes gentle, his voice steady. "This is for you," he said. Syria shook her head, confusion filling her heart. "For me," she whispered, the words trembling. "No, it cannot be for me." Her hands trembled as she clutched her cloth tighter. No one had ever spoken those words to her before. No one had ever given her anything just for her. But Elias nodded, his voice warm. "Yes, for you, because you deserve at least one birthday." Her eyes filled with tears, her chest tight as if it might break. The flame on the candle flickered, waiting. Elias placed the cake gently before her, as if presenting a treasure to royalty. The ribbon shone faintly, the berries adding color, small but beautiful. Syria stared at it, unable to breathe, unable to move. She whispered again, "A birthday for me." The words felt heavy and light all at once. The weight of years without joy crashed against the sudden spark of hope. Her tears spilled, running down her silver cheeks. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. For the first time, someone had remembered her. Around them, the colony began to notice. Voices quieted, eyes turned, whispers spread through the crowd. People stopped what they were doing, curious about the strange sight of a human kneeling before an alien girl with a glowing cake. But Elias ignored them all, his gaze fixed only on Syria. He spoke softly, "Make a wish and blow out the candle." Syria's lips trembled, her breath shaking. She leaned forward slowly, her tears still falling. The candle flame flickered close to her face, warm and gentle. Her eyes closed, and for the first time, she wished for something real. She breathed out, and the flame died, leaving smoke curling into the air. The crowd gasped softly, but Syria only sat frozen, her hands pressed to her chest, her heart beating faster than ever before. The cake was real, the candle was real, the moment was real. And as she opened her eyes, Elias gave her the smallest smile, one that spoke more than words ever could. "You are not forgotten," he whispered. For Syria, the world changed in that instant. Her loneliness cracked, her emptiness filled with warmth. The ache inside her chest was replaced by something she had never known before: belonging. The candle's smoke drifted upward, curling into the sky like a whisper of hope. Syria sat frozen, her glowing eyes wide, her silver cheeks wet with tears. For a long moment, she did not move, afraid the vision before her would vanish if she blinked. But the cake remained, the ribbon remained, and the human remained, steady and real. Elias leaned closer, his voice gentle. "Now you have a birthday, Syria." The sound of her name startled her, for so few had ever spoken it. It felt strange and beautiful to hear it from someone's lips, as if he had returned something she had lost long ago. Her lips parted, trembling. No one ever said it was mine." Elias pushed the cake a little closer, the berries pressed into the rough surface, glowing faintly under the lantern light. "It is yours," he said. "This moment, this day, it belongs to you." Her chest ached with a pain both sharp and sweet. She placed her trembling hand over her mouth, holding back a sob. The crowd that had gathered stood silent now. Whispers rippled between them, surprise etched on every face. They had never cared for the alien girl, never noticed her shadow passing through their lives. And yet here was a human, a stranger, giving her what none of them had thought to give. Syria's hands hovered over the cake, her fingers shaking. She had never touched something made just for her. Her throat tightened as she whispered, "What do I do?" Elias smiled faintly. "You eat. You laugh. You enjoy, because today is your day." Her tears fell faster, but her lips curved into the smallest smile. She took the first piece carefully, tasting sweetness she had never known. The sugar melted on her tongue, the soft texture filling her mouth with warmth. It was clumsy, imperfect, but to her it was more delicious than all the feasts she had ever seen from a distance. The crowd watched in silence, some shifting uneasily, some softening as they saw the glow in her eyes. A few children whispered to each other, confused by the idea that the lonely alien girl could smile. But no one spoke loud enough to interrupt, for something sacred seemed to hang in the air. Syria wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, still trembling. She looked at Elias with shining eyes. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. Elias answered simply, "Because no one should live without being celebrated, not even once." The words sank deep into her heart, heavier than any gift. No one had ever spoken such kindness to her before. The colony's lights flickered as night deepened. Still, the glow of that small cake seemed brighter than all the lanterns around. Syria laughed softly, the sound awkward and uncertain, for laughter was something she had almost forgotten how to do. But once it came, it did not stop. The sound spilled out of her, mixing with her tears, and for the first time, the ache in her chest eased. Elias leaned back slightly, his own expression softening. He had seen many worlds, many battles, many faces hardened by war and hunger. But none of it compared to the simple beauty of a girl discovering joy for the first time. He thought quietly, this was worth every sacrifice. As the night grew darker, Syria's small corner of the colony transformed. What had been cold and empty now pulsed with life, with warmth, with something that felt like family. The humans who once ignored her stood at a distance, unsure but curious. For the first time, they saw her not as a shadow, but as someone alive, someone worth noticing. Syria hugged her cloth close, though now it was wet with tears. Her voice trembled as she whispered to Elias, "This is the best day of my life." And though her words were quiet, they carried through the silence. Elias nodded slowly, his voice steady. "Then it is only the beginning." The candle was gone, the cake half eaten, but the memory burned brighter than any flame. Syria's first birthday had been written into her heart, and for the first time, she closed her eyes not in sorrow, but in peace. The loneliness that once chained her began to break, piece by piece. And though she did not yet know what tomorrow would bring, she knew one truth that would never leave her. She was no longer invisible. The night after her first birthday was quiet, yet for Syria it was brighter than any dawn. She sat with the remains of the cake before her, the ribbon tied carefully around her wrist. Every bite she had tasted still lingered in her mouth, sweet and soft. Every word Elias had spoken echoed in her mind like a song she never wanted to end. She had lived so long in silence, forgotten, unseen. But now her chest carried something new, a warmth that refused to fade. For the first time, she believed she was more than a shadow. For the first time, she believed she belonged. Elias sat nearby, watching her quietly. He did not demand thanks. He did not ask for praise. The look in her glowing eyes was enough. He had given her something small, yet it had changed everything. And in her smile, he saw proof that humans could bring light even into the darkest corners. The colony was still, but whispers spread through its people. Some had mocked the alien girl before. Some had ignored her completely. Now they wondered why a stranger had done what they never had. Some felt shame, others felt curiosity. But all of them had seen her smile, and it was something they could not forget. Syria looked at Elias with trembling lips. "Will this end?" she asked, her voice soft, her heart fearful. "Will I go back to being invisible tomorrow?" Elias shook his head slowly, his voice firm yet kind. "No, not anymore, because once someone sees you, truly sees you, you can never be invisible again." Her tears came again, but this time they were warm, not heavy. She laughed through them, holding her cloth close, the ribbon brushing against her skin. The ache that had lived inside her for so long was breaking apart, piece by piece. Hope was rushing in to take its place. Elias stood and extended his hand. "Come," he said, "walk with me." Syria hesitated, her small fingers twitching, but then she reached out and took his hand. It felt strong, steady, like an anchor pulling her into a world she had never dared to step into. Together, they walked through the colony streets. The same streets that once ignored her, the same people who once passed her like air. Now they watched, silent, as the alien girl walked with the human by her side. Syria's heart raced, but she held her head higher than before. For the first time, she was not walking alone. At the edge of the settlement, Syria stopped and looked at the stars. They had always felt distant, unreachable. But tonight, they seemed closer, brighter, almost within her grasp. She whispered softly, "I wished for this. When I blew the candle, I wished not to be alone." Elias turned toward her, his tired face carrying a rare smile. "And your wish came true," he said. Syria nodded, her glowing eyes shining with hope. "Yes, it did," she whispered. "This is the best day of my life." The wind carried her words across the silent colony. And though tomorrow would bring new struggles, new doubts, maybe even new pain, Syria knew she had been given something no one could take away. A beginning. The alien girl who had never had a birthday now carried the memory of one. And in her heart, it was not just the taste of cake or the glow of a candle she carried. It was the proof that even the most forgotten soul could be remembered, that even in the coldest silence, kindness could bloom, and that sometimes, all it took was one human to change everything. Syria smiled, her tears drying at last, her voice steady as she whispered, "I am not invisible anymore.